My name is Cora, and I am 30 years old. The life I've carefully built for myself, a life of quiet joy and chosen family, was almost shattered on the day I was supposed to marry the man I love. It began with a promise my father made and then broke. A familiar wound reopened when he chose my sister's manufactured triumph over my own quiet happiness. For a lifetime, it felt as though my sister, Audrey, always won these silent battles. But what happened on my wedding day taught me that victory isn't about vanquishing others, it's about claiming your own worth. The man who ultimately took my father's place at my side, and my father's reaction to it, reshaped the very definition of family for me, leaving an echo in my heart that resonates to this day. To understand the fault lines in our family, you have to picture our home in the Willamette Valley, a place of breathtaking beauty and quiet tradition just south of Portland. We lived in a sprawling craftsman home my father had designed himself, set against a backdrop of Douglas firs and rolling green hills. From the outside, it was a portrait of success. My father, Julian, was a respected architect, a man who dealt in blueprints and right angles, whose world was ordered and precise. He had a brilliant mind and a presence that filled a room, but his affection was often conditional, a reward for achievements he deemed worthy. In my early years, I was a recipient of that affection. I was the quiet, artistic child, lost in sketchbooks and watercolor palettes. My mother, Helena, was the gardener of our family, both literally and figuratively. She cultivated a magnificent English rose garden that was her sanctuary, and she nurtured the wild, creative spirit in me. "Don't you ever let anyone straighten your beautiful, messy lines, Cora," she would tell me, her hands smelling of earth and lavender as she tucked a stray curl behind my ear. "The world has enough straight lines." My mother was the soft focus in our family picture, blurring the sharp edges of my father's expectations. She understood that my older sister, Audrey, and I were two entirely different species of flower. Audrey was a hardy, sun-seeking bloom, ambitious, pragmatic, and fiercely competitive. She excelled in debate, in student government, in everything that had a clear metric for success. She was my father's daughter, reflection of his own drive. I was my mother's, content to find beauty in the shade, in the abstract, in the things that couldn't be measured or ranked. The balance shifted, then shattered, when I was 14. A sudden, aggressive cancer took my mother from us in the space of a single, brutal autumn. The vibrant colors of her garden faded, and a permanent, chilling frost seemed to settle over our home. With Helena gone, the buffer between my father's world and mine vanished. He threw himself into his work, designing soaring, sterile buildings that seemed to be the antithesis of the warm, living home my mother had created. In that vacuum, Audrey, then 17, appointed herself the new matriarch. She saw my grief not as a shared sorrow, but as a weakness, an inconvenient messiness. "Dad has enough to deal with," she'd say, her voice sharp, when she found me crying in my mother's garden. "You need to be stronger." She began managing the house with ruthless efficiency, her pragmatism a stark contrast to my mother's gentle chaos. My father, lost in his own sorrow, was grateful. He saw her strength as a virtue and my quiet retreat into art as a failure to cope. Their bond solidified, built on a shared language of ambition and stoicism, leaving me on the outside, speaking a language no one in that house understood anymore. Audrey was a master of subtle sabotage. She knew my father's triggers and my vulnerabilities. When I won a regional art prize in my junior year of high school, the ceremony was on a Tuesday night. I had pinned the invitation to the family corkboard weeks in advance. The night before, I overheard her on the phone with him. "Cora's being so modest about this art thing," she said, her tone a perfect blend of admiration and concern. "She told me she gets terribly nervous with an audience and that she'd almost rather you didn't come, so she can just slip in and out. She knows how busy you are with the new waterfront project." The next day, I sat alone in the school auditorium, my name a hollow echo in the vast space as I walked to the stage. My father sent a text, "Heard you won. Great job. Had to work late." I learned later from his secretary that he'd had no late meetings. Audrey had simply given him the excuse he needed to prioritize his work over my world, a world he was increasingly uncomfortable in. When I confronted her, she just shrugged, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. "You're too sensitive, Cora. I was just trying to help." By the time I was 18, I was desperate for an escape. I chose a university in Portland, far enough for a fresh start, but close enough that I couldn't be accused of abandoning my family entirely. College was a revelation. I found my fellow artists, poets, thinkers who saw the world in shades of color and emotion, not just black and white. It was in a Shakespeare seminar during my sophomore year that I met Leo. He was a software engineer, logical and kind, with a quiet confidence that I found deeply soothing. He asked to borrow my notes, and our first coffee meeting stretched into a 4-hour conversation about everything from iambic pentameter to the ethics of artificial intelligence. Leo's mind was a beautiful, ordered garden that made space for my wild, untamed one. His family was everything mine was not. His mother, Eleanor, a warm, bustling kindergarten teacher, and his father, Robert, a gentle high school history teacher, welcomed me with an uncomplicated affection that felt like coming home. They had a sprawling, comfortable house filled with books, laughter, and the smell of freshly baked bread. They came to my student art shows, celebrated my small victories, and held me when the obligatory holiday visits to my father and Audrey left me feeling hollowed out. After graduation, Leo and I built a life together in a cozy apartment in Portland's Laurel Hill neighborhood. I found a job as an illustrator for a small, independent publisher of children's books, and Leo thrived at a tech startup. We filled our life with art, books, long hikes in the Columbia River Gorge, and the steady, comforting rhythm of our love. I maintained a fragile truce with my family through brief, superficial phone calls with my father. Audrey, now a successful investment banker, never missed an opportunity to remind me how she was the one holding down the fort back home, a constant, low-grade hum of guilt in the background of my life. Leo proposed on our 6th anniversary. He took me to the Japanese garden, a place of serene beauty we both loved. As we stood on the wooden bridge over the koi pond, bathed in the soft glow of the late afternoon sun, he got down on one knee. "Cora," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you taught me how to see the color in the world. You're the most compassionate, resilient, and beautiful soul I have ever known. I want to spend the rest of my life building a world with you. Will you marry me?" The ring was a simple, elegant band with a single, moss-green sapphire, the color of the Oregon forests we loved to explore. It was perfect. For one flawless evening, I let myself exist purely in that joy, pushing away the familiar anxiety of what would come next. The next day, I called my father. After the usual pleasantries, I took a breath. "Dad, Leo and I are engaged." There was a pause, just a beat too long. "Well, that's wonderful news, Cora," he said, his tone more suited to a minor promotion than his daughter's engagement. "He's a good man. When's the date?" No warmth, no excitement, just the practical, logistical mind of an architect. "We're thinking next June," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "Maybe the 22nd. "Good. I'll mark it in my calendar," he said. "Let me know the details." Audrey's text was a masterpiece of feigned enthusiasm. "OMGC. Congrats. So thrilled for you. Let's see the ring." The cascade of exclamation points felt more like an attack than a celebration. At 33, Audrey's own romantic life was a series of high-powered, short-lived affairs that never seemed to lead to the kind of settled happiness she publicly disdained but privately craved. Despite the tepid family response, Leo and I dove into planning. We chose a beautiful old winery in the hills outside of Portland, with a sweeping lawn for the ceremony and a rustic, timber-framed hall for the reception. We set the date for June 22nd, a year away, and sent out save-the-dates immediately. Leo's mother, Eleanor, became my surrogate mother of the bride, her eyes welling up with happy tears when I found my dress a simple, flowing A-line gown of ivory silk chiffon. "Oh, Cora," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Your mother would be so incredibly proud." During one of our planning calls, I gathered my courage. "Dad," I said, my heart thudding. "I was hoping I would be really honored if you would walk me down the aisle." Another pause, but this time, when he spoke, there was a crack in his professional facade. A hint of the father I remembered from my childhood. "Of course, Cora. I would be honored." That one sentence felt like a bridge across years of distance. I clung to it, a fragile hope that this wedding could be a new beginning for us. In the midst of the wedding planning, I grew closer to Leo's uncle, Simon. He was his mother's brother, a retired history professor in his late 60s with kind, intelligent eyes and a gentle wit. A lifelong bachelor, he doted on Leo and his brother, and he extended that same warmth to me. At family dinners, Simon would seek me out, engaging me in conversations about art history or the symbolism in the children's books I illustrated. He listened with an intensity that made me feel truly seen. "You have a rare ability to capture emotion in a single line," he told me once, after I showed him some of my recent work. "It's a form of poetry." His validation felt more meaningful than any professional praise I had ever received. When he received our save the date, he called me personally. "I've already booked my hotel, Cora. I wouldn't miss this for the world. I'm looking forward to celebrating you both." His genuine excitement was a balm to my soul. The first tremor of trouble came about 6 months before the wedding. Audrey started posting vague but grand-sounding updates on social media about a major charity gala she was chairing for the Children's Hospital. When I asked her about it, she was evasive. "Oh, it's just a little thing. A lot of work, but for a good cause." But as the months went on, the posts became more specific: venue tours, menu tastings, mentions of a big night in June. A knot of dread began to tighten in my stomach. The earthquake hit 4 months before our wedding. Audrey called on a Sunday evening, her voice a syrupy confection of false sincerity. "Cora, hi. I wanted to be the first to tell you some amazing news. We finally secured the date for my fundraising gala. It's going to be June 22nd. Isn't that a crazy coincidence?" The air left my lungs. "Audrey, that's my wedding day. You've known that for 8 months." "Oh my gosh, was it?" She feigned shock. With everything going on, the dates must have gotten jumbled in my head. Anyway, it's no big deal. My event is a black tie dinner downtown, starting at 7. Your ceremony is at 4, right? Dad can easily do both. He can see you get married and then pop over to the gala. It's for the kids, after all. He's one of the main sponsors." I knew instantly what she had done. She hadn't just created a conflict, she had framed it as a choice between my selfish desire and her selfless charity. After a clipped, cold goodbye, I immediately called my father. "Dad, did you know Audrey's gala is on my wedding day?" "Yes," she told me, he said, his voice already defensive. "It's unfortunate timing, but it's a huge commitment she's made. A lot of important people will be there." "But you're supposed to walk me down the aisle," I said, my voice pleading. "You can't be at a winery an hour outside the city and at a gala downtown at the same time." "I'll make it work, Cora," he insisted. "We'll figure out the logistics. Don't make this into a drama." But in the weeks that followed, I felt him slipping away. His calls were filled with talk of the gala, the guest list, the importance of his presence there. He started asking if my ceremony could be moved earlier, if the pre-wedding photos were really necessary for him to be in. The hope I had felt shriveled and died. 2 weeks before the wedding, the final blow came. It was a Tuesday evening. Leo and I were finalizing our seating chart, a puzzle of relationships and histories. My father's name was on the screen when my phone rang. "Cora," he began, his voice stiff with rehearsed formality. "I've been looking at the schedule for the 22nd, and I'm afraid it's just not going to be possible for me to make it to your ceremony. Audrey's event requires me to be there for the VIP reception at 5, and with the drive from the winery, the timing is just too tight. As a primary sponsor, I simply have to be there." I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. My voice was a whisper. "So you're choosing not to come to my wedding?" "It's not a choice, Cora. It's a responsibility," he corrected, his tone sharp. "This is a major philanthropic event. I have to support your sister. I'm sure you understand. I will do my absolute best to get to your reception later in the evening, maybe by 9 or 9:30. And who is supposed to walk me down the aisle? The question hung in the air, heavy with years of disappointment. Well, he said, a note of impatience in his voice. I'm sure Leo's father would be happy to do it. Or you could walk by yourself. It's very modern. After I hung up, a profound and terrible silence filled the room. Then, a single sob escaped me, and it was as if a dam broke. I collapsed into Leo's arms, the carefully constructed walls I had built around my heart crumbling into dust. He's not coming, I wept. He chose her. Again. Leo held me, his own quiet anger a solid presence at my back. That night, he gently suggested we postpone. We can pick another day, Cora. A day where he has no excuse. The thought was tempting, a retreat from the pain. But then a different feeling rose up inside me, fierce and defiant. No, I said, my voice clear. I will not rearrange my life to accommodate her cruelty. This is our day. We're getting married on June 22nd. The next day, I spoke to Eleanor, Leo's mother. I tried to sound cheerful, but she saw through it instantly. I ended up telling her everything, the words pouring out in a torrent of grief and anger. Oh, my dear girl, she said, her voice full of a mother's pain for her child. I am so sorry. He is making a mistake he will regret for the rest of his life. But that is his burden to carry, not yours. This day is about you and Leo, and the beautiful life you are starting together. Her words were a comfort, but the image of walking down that long aisle alone felt like a public declaration of my father's rejection. A few days later, Simon called. Leo told me what happened, he said, his voice gentle. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Family wounds are the deepest. You seem to understand, I said, sensing a story behind his words. He was quiet for a moment. More than you know. My own father refused to come to my university graduation. He wanted me to join his construction business, and he saw my passion for history as a personal betrayal. Some things they leave a permanent mark. But we learn to build our lives around them, not in spite of them, but with the wisdom they give us. His empathy was a gift. Thank you, Simon. That means a lot. Of course, Cora. And remember, family isn't about who you share blood with. It's about who shows up. A week before the wedding, I hit my lowest point. Surrounded by RSVPs, floral arrangements, and the happy anticipation of our friends, I felt utterly alone. The joy of the occasion was soured by this one profound absence. That night, Leo's mother called and invited me to lunch the next day. At a quiet cafe, Eleanor listened as I confessed my feelings. I keep telling myself I don't need him, I said, twisting my napkin. But the thought of walking into that ceremony with everyone watching it feels like I'm walking in with a sign that says, unloved. Eleanor reached across the table and took my hand. It's okay to feel that, Cora. Your feelings are valid. But you are not unloved. You are so loved. She paused, a thoughtful expression on her face. Can I tell you something about Simon? I nodded, curious. When my first husband died, I was a young widow with a small child. When I met and fell in love with Robert a few years later, my own father was horrified. He said his second marriage was undignified and refused to attend the wedding. He said it would embarrass him. That's awful, I whispered. It was, she said. And it was Simon who came to me. He said, Eleanor, you deserve to be given away by someone who is bursting with pride for you, not by someone who is ashamed. And he walked me down the aisle. He has never had children of his own, but he has been the most devoted uncle, father, and friend to all of us. He shows up, Cora. He always shows up. The story settled in my heart, a seed of an idea. It was a bold, unconventional thought, but it felt right. Do you think, I began, my voice hesitant, do you think he would be offended if I asked him? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Oh, Cora, she said, her voice breaking. I think it would be one of the greatest honors of his life. That evening, I called Simon and asked if he would meet me for coffee. He suggested a cozy bookstore cafe he knew I loved. He was already there when I arrived, with 2 lattes waiting. I remembered you like oat milk, he said with a smile. The small detail, the simple act of being remembered, solidified my resolve. After a few minutes of easy conversation, I took a deep breath. Simon, I have something I want to ask you. He gave me his full, undivided attention. As you know, my father has decided he can't make it to my ceremony. The words still stung. Eleanor told me the story of how you walked her down the aisle. It was so beautiful. And I was wondering I would be so honored if you would consider walking me down the aisle. Simon looked at me, his expression shifting from gentle curiosity to profound, unguarded emotion. His eyes glistened, and for a long moment, he was unable to speak. Cora, he finally said, his voice thick. Are you sure? This is your day. It should be perfect. I am absolutely sure, I said, a wave of certainty washing over me. You have shown me more kindness and support than my own father has in years. Having you by my side would make the day perfect. He reached across the table and took my hand. Then it would be my privilege, Cora. My absolute privilege. The morning of my wedding was bathed in the soft, hopeful light of a perfect Oregon June. My bridesmaids and I filled the bridal suite with laughter, music, and the scent of hairspray. My phone chimed with a text from my father. Thinking of you today. The gala setup looks incredible. We'll try to make the end of your reception. Save me a dance. No apology. No, I love you. Just a stark reminder of his priorities. I showed it to my maid of honor, who simply shook her head and gave me a fierce hug. An hour before the ceremony, there was a gentle knock on the door. It was Simon, looking distinguished in a beautifully tailored charcoal gray suit. He held a small, antique-looking box. He stepped inside and handed it to me. A little something for the bride, he said with a warm smile. Inside, on a bed of faded velvet, lay a delicate, hand-tatted lace handkerchief, yellowed with age, with the initial H embroidered in pale blue thread. It was my mother's, he said softly. Her name was Helena, just like yours. She carried it on her wedding day. I thought you might like a piece of her with you today. Something old and something blue. Tears streamed down my face as I took the delicate fabric in my hands. It was the most thoughtful gift I had ever received. Simon, it's perfect. Thank you. He simply patted my hand, his eyes full of understanding. At 4 o'clock, as the string quartet began to play a soft, hopeful melody, the large wooden doors to the lawn swung open. Simon stood beside me, his presence a solid, reassuring anchor. He offered me his arm. Ready, my dear, he whispered. I nodded, my heart full. As we walked down that grassy aisle, I saw them all, our friends, Leo's family, their faces shining with love. And at the end of the aisle, I saw Leo, his eyes locked on mine, a look of such profound love and adoration on his face that it took my breath away. In that moment, the pain of my father's absence didn't disappear, but it was overshadowed by an overwhelming wave of gratitude for the family I had chosen, and that had chosen me. The ceremony was a blur of happy tears and heartfelt vows. The reception was a joyful celebration under a canopy of fairy lights. As the evening wore on, my cousin Noah, my mother's nephew, arrived, looking flustered. Cora, I'm so sorry I'm late, he said, giving me a hug. I went to Audrey's gala first. Don't worry about it, I said. How was it? He looked uncomfortable. That's the thing. It wasn't a gala. It was just a party at her condo. Maybe 20 people. It wasn't a fundraiser. I asked one of her friends about the children's hospital, and she had no idea what I was talking about. The world tilted on its axis. She had lied. About everything. It wasn't a choice between my wedding and a noble cause. It was a choice between my wedding and her petty, manufactured drama. The depth of her deception was staggering. The reception was winding down around 10 o'clock when I saw him. My father, standing awkwardly at the entrance to the hall, his suit looking rumpled, his face a mask of confusion. Leo saw him too and squeezed my hand. I've got this, I whispered. I walked over to him, a strange calm settling over me. You're late, I said, my voice even. The event, it wasn't what I thought, he stammered, looking around the nearly empty room. It looks like it was a nice wedding. It was a perfect wedding, I said. Noah told me about Audrey's gala. His face paled. I don't understand. She said. I know what she said, Dad. She lied. At that moment, Simon walked over, a gentle smile on his face. Cora, the photographer wants one last shot of you and Leo by the fireplace. My father stared at Simon, a dawning horror in his eyes. You, he said, his voice low. You're the one who walked her down the aisle. I am, Simon said, extending a hand. Simon Thorne. It's an honor to finally meet you, Julian. My father ignored his hand. I don't understand why my daughter had to be walked down the aisle by a total stranger. The words were meant to wound, but they no longer had the power. Before I could speak, Simon answered, his voice calm and steady, devoid of anger. With all due respect, Julian, I'm not a stranger. I'm the man who has been to every one of her art shows for the last 6 years. I'm the man who reads the books she illustrates to my grandnieces. I'm the man who showed up today. Being a father isn't a title. It's an action. The simple, profound truth of his words hung in the air between them. My father looked from Simon's steady, compassionate gaze to my face, and for the first time, I saw the walls of his pride and denial begin to crack. The anger drained out of him, replaced by a look of deep, gut-wrenching shame. I have to go, he whispered, turning abruptly. I need to talk to Audrey. He strode out of the hall without another word, leaving a ringing silence in his wake. Leo came and wrapped his arms around me. Are you okay? I leaned my head against his chest, watching my father's car pull away into the darkness. I think so, I said. And for the first time, I knew it was true. The truth was out, and whatever came next, I was no longer alone in it. We spent 2 weeks on the Oregon coast for our honeymoon, a quiet time of misty mornings, long walks on the beach, and healing. When we returned, there was a series of voicemails from my father, each one more broken than the last. He had confronted Audrey. She had admitted everything, then packed a bag and left, cutting off all contact. He was alone in that big, silent house, finally forced to face the wreckage he had allowed to happen. It took me a month to call him back. We met for coffee, and for the first time, he just listened. He listened as I told him about all the years of small hurts, the missed ceremonies, the lies I had been too afraid to challenge. He cried, not with self-pity, but with real, honest remorse. Rebuilding has been a slow, tentative process. It's made of weekly phone calls that are still sometimes awkward, and family dinners where he sits at our table with Leo's family, a quiet, humbled guest. He and Simon have forged a strange, respectful friendship, born from their shared love for me. Audrey remains a ghost in our lives, sending sporadic, hollow emails from a new city. I don't know if that wound will ever heal, and I've learned to be at peace with that. On our first anniversary, we had a small dinner party. My father was there, as were Eleanor, Robert, and, of course, Simon. As we sat around the table, Simon raised his glass. To Cora and Leo, he said, his eyes finding mine. And to the beautiful, messy, wonderful truth that family is not something we are born into, but something we build, with love and with choice, one day at a time. As I looked around that table, at my husband, at the man who had raised me and was trying to find his way back, and at the man who had stepped in to show me what a father's love could look like, I knew he was right. My wedding day almost fell apart, but in the breaking, it revealed what was truly strong. It taught me that sometimes, the family we choose is the one that truly sets us free.